As the Kedushas Levi and so many Sfarim discuss, nothing is coincidental. Every yontif coincides with a tkufa mesuyemes, somewhat aligned with the reka, with the backdrop of the parshas where we encounter that yontif. L'dugma, talk about the yontif of Shavuos Lamashal. The Torah writes in Archaim Simatav Chavches that Parshas Bamidbar almost always directly precedes the Yontiv of Shavuos. So what's the idea of Shavuos always coming on the heels of Parshas Bamidbar? So we mentioned Bamidbar is what? Is counting Klal Yisrael, showing the Chavivus of Klal Yisrael, the Achdus in Klal Yisrael. What's the Haftarah for Parshas Bamidbar? Gevaldig, the Haftarah is taken from the second parak of Hosea, and it talks about uniting Klal Yisrael. The Achona we had for Matan Torah was what? Vayichon Shom Yisrael Keneged Har Kish Echab Leivechad, as Rashi cites that oft quoted in Mechilta. Mamela, we go into Shavuos on the heels of a Parsha Bamidbar where we're all getting together. It's all about the Achdus, counting Klal Yisrael. The whole musig of a mispar, of a spheres to unite us, to combine all the chalokim that comprise the composite whole called Klal Yisrael. We're being mechaber the miyacha. The one who writes a sefer is a mechaber. He's joining things together. A sphere is an act of uniting. That is Parshas Bamidbar on the heels of having united Klal Yisrael, as the Haftarah makes clear. What is the Haftarah? It's all about you're going to have half of Klal Yisrael on one eights and one half of Klal Yisrael. You're going to bring the two together. When you highlight the actives of Klal Yisrael, then and only then can you journey into a Yontiv of Shavuos. Comes to Sukkos. Sukkos is very clear as well. Sukkos comes when? United with Simchas Torah. The idea is Sukkos Keneged Yaakov Avinu, the Torah writes in Taf Yud Zayin, Yaakov the Omer Torah. We get to the Siyum of the Milsa. We get to the close of the Torah. We finish reading the Torah Sukkos time. That is Man Simchasenu. It's going to coincide. We're going to make a Yontiv Darbanim Simchas Torah, celebrating the Yontiv that corresponds to Yaakov Avinu. We get to the end of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. Simchas Torah. There's always an alignment, always a connection, an interrelationship between the Zman, the Tkufa, the Reka, the backdrop for any given Yontif. What about Pesach? Pesach Kemat almost always comes right after Parshas Tzav. So this is something we discussed in the past, that the Yesod of Pesach is what? Chipos and Yotzim Mitzrayim. And what is Tzav? Rashi, the very beginning of the Parsha, Ain't Tzav Eloloshin Zerus, like Chazal told us in Kedushin, the bottom of Chavtes and Aleph, on the heels of Parshas Tzav. Then you can understand the name of Chipozen, where's reason Magdim and the Mitzvah, couched in the context of Mesechus Psochim, Daf Dalet Amanav. Who teaches us Risa Makdim Mitzvah? Avram Avinu, Shenemar Vayashkim Avram Abokir, writes the Torah. Avram is Keneged Pesach. Avram Keneged Pesach, who teaches us the Indian of Zrizus. Zrizus is the manifestation, the expression of a Chipos and Yotzim Mitzrayim. Mela, Zrizus will be found in Dafka Meseches Psochim. It'll be Keneged Avram Avinu. That's the Yesod, that's Pesach, and that is why we have Pesach right in the Yos of Parshas Av. So when it comes to the Sholosh Regalim, we can understand. When it comes to Chanukah, one of the Yom Tovim Midrabanan, that makes a lot of sense. It always coincides with Parshios Vayeshev and Miketz, whether it's one Shabbos Chanukah, two Shabbos of Chanukah, what's Miketz Vayigash. It's all around the Reka, the backdrop of Yosef HaTzadik. Writes the Megalamukas, Yosef HaTzadik is the one connected the Yontiv of Chanukah. So many relationships. We talked about this many times. So Yosef corresponds to Chanukah. Avaja Aleph Yerches V'Haya Beis Yaakov Leish Beis Yosef Lahava. He's the tip of the flame. Yosef is connected Chanukah. Osnos B'nei Yisachar. He writes that in his Mamorim in Chodesh Kislev. Osnos is Gematria Chochma times 7. Connected the Zayin Kaneh HaManayra. Vayesha begins. Ben Zekunim. Who's the Ben Zekunim? Yosef. Ben Zekunim is Ben Zayin Konim. Writes the Sefer Gematrios Lamar Rashmi Lublin, Ben Zekunim spelled Chaser Vav, Zayin Konim. Who's connected the Zayin Konim of the Menaira? Yosef, the Ben Zekunim, Chochma. That's the whole lineage of Chochmas HaYavonis, Chochmas HaTorah. That is the whole Machlokes. That's why we went down to Goshna. Yosef led the charge. Goshna writes the Bnei Yisachar as Neis Gadol HaYasham. And Yovan, here's Melech Yovan Gematria 156, Antiochus 156, writes the Bnei Yisachar, Yosef Zelu Moses 156. It's all about Yosef and Chanukah. Where are you going to have Chanukah Dafka coinciding with the Parshios where Yosef occupies the spotlight, center stage, Parshios Vayeshev and Miketz. Okay, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, Chanukah, it all makes sense. Purim, what's the connection? I never really saw anyone be marich. What's the relationship? of the Yontiv, the Chag de Rabbanan of a Purim coinciding with the end of Sefer Shemos. Why is Purim Miyuchad to the end of the Siyum of the Milsa? Building a Mishkan and closing Sefer Shemos, the Chag Geula. Why is that the Zman of Purim? So I'd like to suggest the following that really just came to mind. So Rabbi side, perhaps this is one idea. I want to take you back to something I mentioned Shabbos time, connected with the Pnei Yeshua, and I think with that Mahalach we'll get to our answer. I mentioned on Shabbos at Shalashudis a Mayudik Ha'ara by Rav Zelig Epstein, the Rosh Yeshiva of Shar Torah, Queen Zechatzadik Levrocha of the Grona Yeshiva. When it came to Chav Gimel Shvat Tavshinai and Zayin, the Yeshiva, Lechod his Yortzeit, they had a Yarchei Kalo, and they put out a separate volume of the Yeshurin, the Ma'asef Torani, the Torah Journal Yeshurin, Lechod the Yarchei Kalo. At the very end of the journal, they have not only his Aspedim for Odi Gedolei Yisrael, they also have a collection of Chidushei Agadata that Rav Zelig Epstein shared. It's at the very end of the Sefer Daf Shin Tzadi Beis. Rav Zelig Epstein asked, what's this idea of mentioning in Havdalah, so we talked about it, we discussed it, so I'll just share with you Rav Zelig Epstein's Ha'ara. He says, the Rav Shach also, one discussion, he once had Rav Shach was bothered, why do we have to talk about Eira, Simcha, Sosan, and Vikar in the context of My Havdalah? And this is something that the Ramal brings in his glass on the tour in Darkei Moshe and Simon Reish Tzadi Vav, and it's something that he writes in Sif Aleph on Reish Tzadi Vav in his Hagos on the Mechaber, and it's already based on Rishayim, the Machzavitri from the Beis Medrash of Rashi, Dav Kuf Tev Zayin, brings it down as does the Maril and Simon Mem Aleph in his Menhogim, Havel Shabbos when he talks about Havdalah. We bring from the Pasuk in Megillah says, Ches Tesayin Lahina Ma'isor V'Simcha V'Sasa Vikar. Explain Rav Zelig Epstein Gevaldik. Explain the Rosh Yeshiva that Havdalah is all about what? Is all about being mavdil between Shabbos and Chol. And as we say at the very end of the Nusach, Lahavdil bein Yisrael la'omid. It's not only bein Kodesh l'Chol, it's bein l'Choshech, and it's bein Yisrael la'omid. The whole musik of Havdalah intertwined is a Havdalah between Klal Yisrael and the nations of the world. What four mitzvahs distinguish Klal Yisrael, Zoktav Zelig Epstein, more than any other mitzvahs? Halach l'maisa, we know a guy, if he wishes to do so, a guy could go in and take on any mitzvahs. Yes, we have Taryag mitzvahs, Makas Chav Gimel and Reis Rav Simlai, and the Goyim only have Zayim mitzvahs. The whole Sugyan Sanhedrin and Vav and Tes, we have all these, but they can, if they want, be Mekayim any mitzvahs. There are only two mitzvahs that if they do them, the Chayim Isa. What's that? The Gemara in Sanhedrin. We have Nun Tes and Aleph Rabbi Yochanan, Goyish Osik P'Torahs Chayim Isa. Earlier on the bottom of the Chesem and Beis Reish Lakish, the Talmud Chaver, a goyish shavas chayim isa. So what do you see? Zoktav Zelig Epstein. You see from the Gemara, a goy who keeps Shabbos is chayim isa. Shabbos ikri moed, Shabbos and Yontif. He's not allowed to keep. Then he's chayim isa. He's mufkul legamri from this world. He has no shaykhis to what it means Shabbos and Yontif. Mitzad echad, mitzad sheni. A guy who learns Torah is mufkul from the. He has no shaykhis to the Torah. He can take on any of the Taryag mitzvahs, even though he's not a mitzvah v'yaisa. If he wishes to do so, do whatever you want. You can't touch my Shabbos and Yontif, and you can't touch my Torah. Okay, what about the Mila? Mila Lamaisa, yeah, if they want, they could go to the hospital and they could circumcise themselves. But as Chazal tell us, Goyim ro b'cheskes areilim hein dahainu, if a Goy undergoes practically, he follows all the nuances and the details, the minutiae of what bris Mila, and they do her kedas v'kedin, halacha Lamaisa, they still have a din of an orel. Still have a din, they have no shaykhs, just like the famous Briskara. The Kasha, we have over 100 teruts, and why is it that Abraham Avinu, if he kept all Torah before it was given, Kedushim Pebezim and Aleph, Yimach Abraham Avinu Kimas Kol Torah Kula Kodesh Aninna. So why in the world didn't he do bris milah? Famous answer the Biskarov. Until you're mitzvah to do so, there's no musig of doing a milah. The hainu mitzvahs milah is to remove the shame arlus. Until I give you a tzivoi, there's no shaykhis. There's no any of arlus. In the end of the day, Goyim also, they have no shaykhis to this. They can do a bris milah. They're not mekayim and mitzvah. That wasn't given to them. They have no shaykhis. Sefer chinuch mitzvah base. The bris milah is mavdil in our guf. We have a havdalah gemura between us and the nations of the world. That's David HaMelech, even the base of Merchot. Gimel, what does it tell us? Even when I look down, I always have bris milah. The guy could do bris milah, and he's still called an oral. He has no shaykhis. He can take it on, and it means nothing. It has no sanctification, no kedusha whatsoever. What about when it comes to tefillin? So too, if he wants, he can put on tefillin. What are tefillin? He's putting on boxes. He's putting on boxes with parchment inside. What do we see? That it's not about stam putting on tefillin. The Gemara says in Brachos Vav Amud Aleph, yes. And tefillin, what do we find? That we are the guy, Echad mikam chayso gayecha ba'aretz, Hashem amarta hayam, Hashem amircha hayam, Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu. We talk about God's oneness. God is the only God that we have in our existence, and Klai Yisrael, we're the only nation that God has in His orbit and His realm as well. Kaviyachol. That's the uniqueness of our relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Tefillin, yes, they can put it on, but what does the pasuk say? V'ro kol amei aretz kashem Hashem nikra alecha v'yaru mimeka. They see a tefillin and they fear. There's only one mitzvah they fear. Why? It's not about this one yid. Down to the tefillin, and the Gemara says Elu tefillin shebarosh is the Vilna Gaon Kayidu would say it's not Elu tefillin al rosh, it's Elu tefillin shebarosh. Like Rosella Gepstein, it's very geschmack. It's not about putting boxes with parshios on top of your head. It's about living it. It's about breathing it. It's about taking the lessons of the tefillin and wearing it Elu tefillin shebarosh, and that's what the goyim see. So a guy can put on tefillin. He can put on the most mahudadik $3,000-$4,000 tefillin. He can put on Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, and you'll never be afraid of him. You'll never have that pechina of looking at him and being filled with a pachad. It's the combination of the neshama of a yid and the tefillin shebarosho. That's what's going to instill and induce fear in the nations of the world. So right, says Zela Gemstein, the goy has no shaykhs to tefillin, has no shaykhs to milah. Memela Zaktav Zela Gemstein, Dafka in the Nusach of Abdullah. What are we going to say? We go to Rabbi Yehuda's famous memra Megillah, the middle of Tesayin Amud Beis, Orazu Torah Shenara Kinyar Mitzvah Torah Or Simcha Zu Simchas Yontif, and Yakar Silson is Zumila Sasanuchim Asachi Yakar is a representative tefillin, and we bring Psukim backing that all up. That is the Inyan of Avdullah. Memela Dafka, when we come to Avdullah and we're being Mavdo Ben Yisrael Amim, what are we going to be Markish? On Purim time we had Avdullah Ben Yisrael Amim. They want? Yes, we don't find a Chazal that they would go there on Mila. They were gozer tefillin, but what would they gozer? They were gozer on what? Let's get rid of Klal Yisrael. So what do we want to be margish? We're separate from the nations of the world. Al Yadei what? Al Yadei Torah, Al Yadei Shabbos and Yontif, Al Yadei Bris Milah, and Al Yadei Tefillin. With Rav Zela Gepstein in tow, we want it to be Miyashiv. What's the Sfas Emes himself answers the question very similarly. Famous kasha the Sfas Emes and others. Why didn't the Megillah just spell it out? Baruch B'Chak Ketana. What do you have to play games? Why beat around the bush? Just tell me Lahidum Maisa Torah, Lahidum Maisa Shabbos and Yontif, Lahidum Maisa Milah, Lahidum Maisa Tefillin. Teretz says because a guy, if he wants, he can do Shabbos, he can go through all the motions. He can put on the Tefillin, Lafini Yastaiti. He could go look and he has a Bris Milah. But you know what he's missing? He might learn Torah, but he has no shaykhs to the or of Torah. That spiritual, metaphysical or he has no shaykhs to. He could go through the motions and keep a Shabbos and Yontif and not do any of the Lamatas Walachas. He has no shaykhs to the Emistika Simcha of what Yontif is all about. Let's not forget the Sifri and Balaischa Yud Yud. The Yom Simchaschem and Modechem and the Rosh Echad Tisku B'Chatzoisus. That's the Sifri. The Yom Simchaschem Elo HaShabbosis. There's an element of Simcha even on Shabbos. That profound, the metaphysical Simcha has no shaykhs to. Milah, he can have a physical bris milah, but he doesn't have the sasan of a milah. He can have the tefillin, he doesn't have the yakar, that bechin of the teferis of what a tefillin's all about. So if that's what we want to be margish Purim time, we want to be margish dafka, the or, the simcha, the sasan, and the yakar, like Rosella Gepstein, it's very geschmack. We have an answer to the Sfas Emes kasha. All right, so Lamaisa, why are we emphasizing in Purim time? Because what was the linear of Purim? Let's go for that to Pnei Yeshua. It's a Gavaldik Sefer was printed 2 years ago, a collection of all the Pnei Yeshuas in Shas, Kefi the Parshios HaTorah. It's not everything, but it's Gavaldik. He has a shtickle here on Purim. It's taken from Pnei Yeshua and Shas, Megillah Daf Yud Amud Beis. Pnei Yeshua is bothered by Hiba Mei Achashverosh, the Gemara Darshans, Amar Rabbi Yitzim Rabbi Yonasan, Kamalkim Shanam Rabbi Hiba Mei, Einu El Eloshen Tzar. That's Hiba Mei Achashverosh, Havi Haman Mechulei, Hiba Mei is Eloshen Tzar. Frank the Pnei Yeshua, Tzar? What's the Tzar? Nothing happened right now. They had a Mishnah. There's no tsar at the beginning of the Megillah. We're going to wait at the Parak Gimel. We're going to have a Haman. Right? And there's no Geseva right now. It's going to be 2 chapters in coming. So what's the tsar right now? There's no tsar. I'm not being margish any tsar. Some Sefer is also bothered. Some Sefer says, no. Over here, why do we begin the Megillah of Ahimi Meisek? There's some Sefer in his parish on the Megillah to show you how much the Eibishter loves us. That even B'Shas that we were sinning, the Refuah came before the Makkah. The Eibishter already was planting the seeds of the Gula Dahainu. The ensuing replacement of Vashti Amaka Yedei Esther already at the Mishnah. Even when we were at our lowest point, the Eibishter was already planting seeds of the Gula. That's the some Sefer, right? So Pnei Yeshua, you know what the Tsar is? The Tsar is, this is the beginning of the Megillah. That's why when Esther says, Kisvuni the Doris, Megillah Zayin Amud Aleph. So write down the story. Start the story from the beginning of the Gezerah. Teretz says the Gezerah only happened because of Ahi B'mei, because of the Mishnah. That Klal Yisrael joined together with Achashverosh. Rav Shimon Chai says to his Talmidim, the bottom of your base of Amud Aleph from Megillah, Neiman Eschaivu, Sonim Shoyso Kliyab also dar. What did they do that they were Chai Misa? They answered, Neisha. They joined the Suda. He says, no, then it would only be the Yid and a Shushan. Why the world? Right? So it doesn't mean that he was arguing with this. I mean, he just said that's not enough. Zakta Pnei Yeshua, but it was a combination of both. It was number one, they got enough from the Suda. Number two is the combination. What began it all? Zakta Heliga Pnei Yeshua and Shas. What began it all was Nanu, they got enough from the Mishnah. What's the need of that enough from the Mishnah? They said, let's go drinking with the Goyim. Let's go eating with the Goyim. Let's go ahead and let's be part of the Goyim. Let's assimilate. Let's acculturate. Let's join together with them. That's why he be made. You know what the Tsar was. You know what the Matzav. You know why there was the Avsharis Techetimsi for Gezer of Haman. Lahashman Lara Glabait. Everybody because they joined with the Goyim. You're making yourselves like the Goyim. You're not separating yourselves from the Goyim. Then you have a Gezerah of Haman. That's why the Megillah Kisvuni the Doris say only write what's necessary. This is necessary. The whole Gezerah only occurred like the Pnei Yeshua because they joined with the Suda, with the Goyim. And that's why the Megillah begins. He even made the Tsar. What's the Tsar? They had to get Shemaka-Time with the Suda. Yeah, but they already were bringing on the ultimate Kliya. Their extermination was warranted because they got Hana from the Suda of Achashverosh. You could eat kosher, Chav Yisrael, Yoshem, Pas Yisrael, V'chulei, but you're eating with the Goyim, you're drinking with the guy, and that's the problem. That's famous Swedish. Vehi sham de lavasenu. What do? We pick up the wine. Zuk the Swedish. Vehi sham de lavasenu lona. You know what saved Klal Yisrael? The Dore Zuk the Revichia Yaakov Swedish. We hold up the wine. You're holding up the wine in Haggadah Shal Pesach. This is what did it. Don't go drinking with the Goyim. This is what Vehi sham de lavasenu. You know what stood up for us? The fact that we didn't go drinking with the Goyim. That's why and why we rescued by Abishur, because you decide to be separate from the Goyim. That's the wine. That's what gets us saved. The Boisai. Where's the lesson in Swedish? Why? What happened in Yetzias Mitzrayim? We were on Memtes Shari Tumah Rabbi. The famous Mechilta the Zohar, holding on the Memtes Shari Tumah. Abishur took us out at the last second. What was the schus that we got out to be saved? And the end we were on Memtes Shari Tumah. But what? We had the schus when you put them in Roshim together. Lo Shinu as Shemamis L'Shaynim Esmal B'Shem Hayimitsu Yanim Shab. We could be there in the pits and the abyss of all depravity and perversity, surrounded by the Mitzrim, the Egyptian society and culture on all sides, and we could sing to Memta Shari Tumah. We could be over in Arizona. You know what schus we had to go out? Lo Shinu Hashemamis L'Shaynim Esmal B'Shem. I have a proud sense of I'm a Yid. I'm different. I dress differently. I talk differently. I have a different name. I have a different Metzias. My essence is altogether Asug Achel Gamri. I'm different from the Goyim around me. What do you see? That you could be holding in the worst and the lowest point spiritually. But if you cling ever tenaciously and hold on steadfast to my conviction that I'm a Yid and I'm proud to be a Yid, and I dress like a Yid, I dress differently than the Goyim around me, and I speak, I have a different vernacular, Lashon HaKodesh, and I keep the Yiddish names, that's the schus to go out. To Mela, what's the whole Sefer Shmos all about? It's the Sefer Gula. And it's all about Yetzias Mitzrayim. And the Ramban writes in his Zagdama, Yetzias Mitzrayim is only complete when you get the Torah. And what happened to Matan Torah? Matan Torah was what? You become a Melechas Kohen V'Goy Kadosh. And the Ramchal writes in Derech Hashem, until this point in time, it was easy to convert. Just marry into the family and become a Yid. Do your Mila, do your Tefillah. After Matan Torah, now there's a cutoff. The Goyim got the chance. Now what? Yishmael, Esav, you don't want the Torah. They're out of the picture. Now there's a clear cut. Geirus henceforth will be a thorough, exhaustive process of Kabbalah Mitzvahs. This now separates the Yidden from the Goyim. What schus did we have? Because we separated ourselves from the Goyim. That is Matan Torah, writes the Ramban. What's the end of Sefer HaGeula? We keep the Matan Torah experience. The Sinai experience is manifest on a Yom Yomi continuing basis. Ayidei the Mishkan. That says what? We can be in a Midbar, but we have our own place where we gather with the Shechina. Us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the Goyim are out of the picture. They're no shaykhs. This is our Sefer Gula. With what schus did we have to have a Sefer Shmais? That no matter how many Averos serious about how much of Avodah Zarah. What do we highlight? We are moved on in a goyim. When do we always have Purim? At the end of a Sefer Gola, and you get to the end of Sefer Shmais, and you realize you could be holding in all the tumim surrounded by the goyim, and you could be in Golas, and we went out and out, so we in the middle of a midbar, and we had goyim on all sides. In the end of the day, how are we zeicha to a shechina? Because we're mavdilas at Tzmeinim and a goyim. We're lo shinu, a shemamas, a shenas, lo shem. We stay separate. That's when you have the Yontav of Purim, like the Pnei Yeshua, like Rozel Legebstein. That's the Havdalah ben Yisrael La'omim. That's the Yisod. He says Rozel Legebstein, well, Purim is all about learning to be mavdol. That's the place it finds its rightful makom at the siyum of Sefer Shmos, the Havka. That's where Zocher to Gula. When the Klais will have the Gula, when you're Masake, and then we said also Shosha, and we said we're going to be separate from the guy and proud to be a Yid. That's when we had the Gula of a Purim. That's when we're ready to make the journey back to the Mishkan, the ultimate Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash. Be'ez Hashem, we should be Zocher to buy a Shlishi Bekar V'Chananima.